As the Titanic slipped beneath the waves, a man clung to life. And somehow, against all odds, he survived. He thought the drama was over, but what awaited him on land was way colder than the Atlantic Ocean on that dreadful night. When he returned to his home country, Japan, people met him with shame. Newspapers denounced him. Strangers whispered behind his back. His only crime, according to them, was that he didn't go down with the ship and with the other passengers. This is a real story of Masabumi Hosono, the only Japanese person on the Titanic who wrote a letter that sheds new light on the details of the well-known tragedy. Mr. Hosono was in his early 40s when he set out on his journey aboard the Titanic. He was a civil servant, working abroad for 2 years and studying the railway system. He really missed his beloved wife and children back home, so he couldn't wait for his assignment to be over. Finally, in 1912, his long return journey to Japan began. He got to travel in style with the prestigious RMS Titanic on her maiden voyage. He made it to London, where he stayed for a short time and bought a new suit, and then to Southampton. There, he took his place in Titanic's second class. As he mentioned in his writings, he was impressed with the Titanic's grand views, enticing aromas, and lively music. At this point, he was counting every sunrise as it meant he was getting closer and closer to home. On April 14th, the weather was fine, and Hosono woke up at 7 a.m. and had a regular day at the ship. Around 10 p.m., he almost fell asleep while reading, when suddenly he felt that the ship had hit something. Then the ship stopped completely. Hosono didn't take it seriously and just went to sleep. Just after midnight, a steward knocked on his door. He gave the passenger a life buoy and told him to go up to the lifeboat stations. Mr. Hosono quickly got dressed and rushed to the deck, where he saw passengers running around in all directions. No one could tell him what had happened. The crew had already started launching the lifeboats at that point, but he couldn't make it through. Somebody from the crew took him for a third-class passenger and told him to return to the lower part of the ship. When he finally made it to the deck, he saw women and kids getting in the lifeboats. Unlike what they show in the Titanic movie, it wasn't that dramatic, and passengers were remarkably calm. No one was shouting. Many of the men were trying to get into the lifeboats, but the sailors wouldn't let them. The crew was sending distress flares that were shining bright blue in the night sky. Mr. Hosono addressed the situation and prepared himself to end his life that day, without panic, not to bring shame upon the Japanese people. The Titanic was tilting at a 45-degree angle when one of the officers shouted that there was room for 2 more people. A man immediately jumped in. Hosono knew if he didn't do the same, he would never see his beloved family again. So he jumped inside the lifeboat, and because it was dark and so many things were going on, the conductor didn't notice that 2 men joined them. As they were rowing away from the ship, they saw many passengers still on the deck. They were screaming for help. By that time, the Titanic was tilting by about 60 degrees. After a while, they heard 3 or 4 loud bangs, and the ship disappeared underwater completely with a strange noise. He didn't mention that it broke in half, as they show in the movie. Hosono and 1 Armenian passenger were the only men in the lifeboat. The women were crying about their husbands, and husbands who went down with the Titanic. At this point, our hero realized that people would blame him for sneaking out, and it made him really sad. They were drifting, and the waves were getting higher and higher. The human voices coming from the water and begging for help disappeared. The lucky ones in the lifeboats were now afraid they wouldn't make it out alive either, as they would get hungry and cold really soon. Only around 3:30 a.m., they saw a ship in the distance. Half an hour later, the ship called Carpathia reached them. The boat that Hosono was on was the last to be rescued. Carpathia saved over 700 people from the Titanic, so it was full to the brim. When Carpathia started sailing away, Hosono saw many icebergs and was afraid there would be another collision. They got food and coffee, and when he felt that he was finally safe, he started worrying about the things he had to leave behind on the Titanic. His foreign coins, watches, new Western clothes, and especially his work notes and diary. But he still had half a sheaf of stationery with Titanic's letterhead in his coat pockets, on which he had started writing a letter to his wife in English. Now he used that piece of paper to describe everything that happened to him, this time in Japanese. This diary became the only such document known to exist on Titanic's stationery. There was a roll call for the survivors and collection of personal details on the ship, and everyone received name tags. When they arrived in New York, Hosono went to the offices of a Japanese company to ask his friends to help him get home as soon as possible. Then he traveled to San Francisco and departed for Japan by boat from there. At that point, his story didn't attract a lot of attention. One American newspaper just called him the lucky Japanese boy, and that was it. When he finally made it back to Tokyo, several magazines and newspapers interviewed our hero, and one of them published a photo of him and his family. And that's when the real drama began. The Japanese press described him as a coward. Strangers sent him letters that were less than friendly. He even lost his job, although he would later get it back thanks to his valuable qualifications. The media would urge him to take his own life in the spirit of a samurai. And some even say the textbooks mentioned him as an example of how to be dishonorable. All this because people thought he had selfishly pushed aside women and kids to get into the lifeboat. They said he had embarrassed Japan, although the women and kids' first idea was not part of the samurai code. It came to Japan from the West and became one of their values only in the middle of the 19th century. Back in the United States, a writer who described the disaster in detail called Mr. Hosono a stowaway aboard Lifeboat 10. The crew member who was in charge of that boat told the US authorities that Hosono and the second man had disguised themselves as women to sneak aboard that boat. Luckily, this false accusation never reached Japan. Hosono had to live with the stigma for surviving for the rest of his life. He tried to avoid the public and didn't let his family members ever mention the Titanic in his house. He passed away at the age of 68 in 1939, and even then, he was sure that he was a disgrace to his own family and his entire country. People would shame his relatives for decades, even after his passing away. So his handwritten diary of what happened to him on that horrible April night was sitting in his drawer, well hidden, until 1997. That year, his family finally decided to publish it. Once it came out, an American researcher and Titanic scholar wrote that the diary actually contradicted other stories from that night. Apparently, someone mistook Hosono for another man who was on a different lifeboat. They said he was acting dishonorably. Hosono was rowing as hard as he could to save his fellow passengers, and wasn't just sitting there as a stowaway or pretending to be a woman. That discovery finally restored his honor. The diary Mr. Hosono kept on Titanic stationery is still one of the most detailed accounts of what happened to the passengers that escaped from the drowning ship, against all odds.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.